People that sleep very little have a higher propensity of having cancer and a higher propensity of having neurodegenerative disorders. People glamorize people that sleep few hours, that work a lot.
I never heard before about the link between cancer and sleeping. Our attention span is been decreasing enormously. That's a 70% drop in attention.
We have reached a bit of an extreme. There may be issues with memory retention. That may be compromised if all you're doing is interacting for 15 seconds with a video and then immediately comes another one and then another one. Stress is actually a normal physiological response, so I don't think we want to completely eliminate it. You can embrace and you can leverage it.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of IPG Interview Series, where real talk meets global life. I'm Caro, your host. In our last conversation, we explored some big ideas about the brain, how it protects our memories, why it doesn't regenerate the way we think, and why predicting things like burnout and cognitive decline is still so difficult. Today, we are taking a different angle. We are moving away from the theory and focusing on what this actually means on our daily lives, how we think, how we make decisions, and how we manage stress, and how we protect our brain over time. Because at the end of the day, this is not just about science, it's about how we show up at work, how we take care of our health, and how we make decisions for the future. So I'm very, very happy and lucky to welcome back Associate Professor Dr. Camilo Libedinsky from National University of Singapore. Let's do this. Welcome back to this IPG Interview Series. And today we are going to be a bit more practical on our approach and to see how can we translate neuroscience into our daily life. So we're going to make it very useful for our decision making, and also how can we evaluate our risk and be better as humans. My first question for you, Doctor, is that I realized, and then this is something I just came out in my phone, funny enough, is that we are constantly changing activities. Our attention span is been decreasing enormously in the past 10, 20 years. It says here that it's been, from 2004, we had a screen attention of 2.5 minutes, which is 150 seconds. And now in 2020, we are under 40 to 45 to 50 seconds, actually. That's a 70% drop in attention. So my question for you is, how can we integrate habits that make us less diverse and be more focused and mindful on what we're doing?
Yeah, that's an important question. I think the first step, I would say, is to not necessarily judge the state that we are in. Just because we were different 10 years ago in terms of how we engaged with media and technology and other humans doesn't necessarily make it better, I think. But with that in mind, let's address a little bit the problem that you were raising, which is that there is indeed a decrease in our allowance for attention over the years. And there are many reasons for this. We know that screen usage and the type of content that you see when you interact with your screens tends to be more and more condensed, which is what you really want. I mean, you don't want to be spending time getting the same message in a longer period, right? But we have reached a bit of an extreme with these short videos, maybe like this one. And the problems, there could be problems associated with this. So, for example, there may be issues with memory retention. If there are things that you want to keep in your long-term memory and remember after a month or after a year, after 10 years, that may be compromised if all you're doing is interacting for 15 seconds with a video and then immediately comes another one and then another one. That could be an issue. But I think you also were asking about the more general attentional state.
Yes.
So attention normally, and sorry, I'll go a bit to the science. Attention is understood as two separate things. One is a state of attention, something that you are also called alertness. You can be, for instance, very alert in the morning and drowsy at night. So your attentional, the overall state of the organism, of the person, is elevated or decreases. Things like certain drugs, like coffee, for instance, they will increase your attention overall. So it's not about a specific thing. And then you have what we call selective attention, which involves the ability to, in a specific context, to incorporate certain information and eliminate distracting information. So both of these are relevant for the way that we interact with media today. The first one, I think, is the easier one, the state attention or alertness. And this, I think, relates to probably changes in the sleep patterns that we have with social media, with YouTube, and so on, TikTok. So yeah, people are sleeping less. They're consuming media later in the night. We know that sleep, the sleep, quote-unquote, hormone, the melatonin, is controlled by the levels of blue light in the environment. And this is great because during the day, the melatonin is suppressed because thanks to this blue light that comes from the sun. But we are not evolutionarily made to have blue light at midnight. This is not how our species evolved. So necessarily what happens then is if you are consuming media, especially screens with blue light, until late hours, your sleep cycle will be disrupted. And there seems to be a little appreciation for sleep in this society. People glamorize people that sleep few hours, that work a lot and are very productive. But actually, sleep is a fundamental process in our health, overall health, including our cognitive health. The overall state of attention, as you sleep less and less over consecutive days, it starts accumulating some tiredness, cognitive tiredness. And this expresses itself as a decrease in your overall level of alertness and ability to engage with any task.
So it's correlated, it's directly proportional how much you sleep with your alertness and your attention.
Your alertness, your attention, your ability to learn. And again, this is not even considering other aspects of health. So there are associations with cancer and with neurodegenerative diseases. This is actually quite a new concept. I think this year only we came to learn that, weirdly enough, I forget the animal, but it's some anemone in the ocean that has no brain, but it has a nervous system. And they found that they sleep. And they also sleep more when you put melatonin. So it's a very, very ancient, hundreds of millions of years of evolution have given us what we have today. And we share this with this anemone. And they found that genetic DNA damage is repaired during sleep. And if these animals don't sleep, they create more mutations. And yeah, it's because repairing DNA requires energy.
Yes.
And we need to save energy. Our brain consumes a lot of energy. So during sleep, we go into a low energy state. We use that instead to repair the DNA. So it's a very old strategy. And that's why people that sleep very little have a higher propensity of having cancer and a higher propensity of having neurodegenerative disorders.
I never heard before about the link between cancer and sleeping. That's quite important for everybody to understand that part.
That's right.
And it's true that you said that lots of people romanticize the fact that they sleep a little and then they can be active the whole day, and it's a very good thing. I think it's important also to understand that is the contrary. Speaking about bad habits, like not sleeping, let's talk about a little bit about burnout and stress. Previously, you mentioned you share with us that it's not something that we can predict, and then it's because it's a temporary state. So it's right. So, what can we do to understand the early signs of burnout and stress to not reach that peak?
So, stress is actually a normal physiological response. So I don't think we want to completely eliminate it. People that don't suffer stress, well, I don't know if there is anybody that doesn't suffer stress, but I would imagine that they would not be very successful in life or survival. So I think what you are referring to is when it goes beyond something helpful in your life. Because stress really prepares you for danger, for unpredictable situations, right? So you want to have an alert state. Actually, what we were talking before about being alert, this is also very related to stress. Stress makes you alert. It takes away resources from certain organs that are not so relevant and redirects them to the heart, to the pupils, to the blood vessels, to the parts of the brain that are important for survival, running away or coming up with a solution to something, not stopping to think about something until it's solved. These are all very important functions in our brain. But when they overreact, when they are overly active, this is what we want to prevent. Some people are just more innately likely to overreact emotionally to certain situations, stressful situations. And some people are not. And this could be just a biological thing. Maybe you just have less stress hormones produced and you just got lucky with that. Or it could be triggered by situations in your life, right? Like if you have, especially in childhood, if you went through traumatic situations, you may develop kind of a sensitization, it's called. Like when you overly react to the same stimulus. If two people receive the same stressor or stressful situation, if one of them received recently a stressful situation, they will overreact to the second one. This happens for everything, but also for stress. So how to prevent it? There are strategies that clinical psychologists or even, that anybody can implement. You can, first of all, acknowledge the fact that you are overreacting. This is something that you can understand. And that doesn't mean that you will not feel the stress. It's just that it will not bother you the way that it bothers you if you don't know what's happening. And you can reframe. That's like a common strategy as well. Instead of saying, well, I have this physiological... So remember that stress and alert and these kind of states are really physiological states. Your heart races, your breathing changes, your perspiration changes, your body temperature, everything. Like it's an internal state that is changing your whole system to be prepared for fighting and for solving something.
Is it stress the same as emotion?
Not the same. Stress is more properly defined as a physiological state. Emotions, there are different theories out there, but emotions are a cognitive appraisal of your internal state. So you could, for instance, see your internal stressed state and evaluate it based on the context. What is it that is making you stressed? Your husband had an affair. Okay, I'm jealous or I'm angry. So you assign this, you interpret with your cognition what is making you feel uneasy. So they're slightly different but related concepts.
All right. Okay, well, I learned something today about the stress, because it's for me, feeling stressful. To be stressed is something abnormal. It's not part of who you are. So you are saying the opposite, saying stress is important, something that we need to embrace in a way.
You can embrace and you can leverage it. So, for example, there are, I think, people that do like speeches in big crowds and things like that. They will, well, many of them will show the stress signs, right? Heart rate and stuff like that. But instead of saying, oh, I'm so stressed, I want to quit, they take it in the opposite direction and say, I'm pumped, I want to kill it. And this is why I'm showing this physiological response. So it's about framing.
Okay, so another question I have, and this is coming from a friend. We take care of our bodies very well, I think, and then there's a lot of ways to do it. You go to the gym, you go to you eat well, etc., etc. But I don't feel we really take serious the brain, like how, or even maybe we don't know how to do it, how to take care of our brain health. And that's why you're here today. But my question is like, what I mean, you already mentioned sleep as one of the not the solutions, but the signals that we need to track and to nurture, to make it to be conscious about it. What else do we need to do to make our brain be healthier? Because and to protect also our long-term memories, because we mentioned in the previous episode that long-term memories are key for to our humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, health in the brain is a bit trickier than when we think about the body, because it's not entirely clear what we mean by, or it maybe has multiple meanings. So maybe you can divide it into like proper health, as in to not get sick, to not develop conditions that you don't want to have. You can think about it as an exercise. Could we exercise in some way? Could I improve my cognitive or emotional abilities with some mental exercise? And then related to that, try to see whether you can come up with strategies to perform better in your day-to-day, like without necessarily improving, just optimizing the tools that you already have. So yeah, that's a very broad set of topics. Maybe let's start with the first. You want to start with like preventing?
Well, I know, for example, you can train your brain. For my mother, for example, she had a surgery, and then there's a physician who go to the house and it start training her brain, doing like different activities where she needs to place something in the right. Follow instructions like you need to do it in the right, now in the left, like activities to activate your brain in.
Yeah.
Is it part of what you mean about health?
Well, I wasn't thinking about that, but that's also kind of an adjacent question. Once you have a brain injury or a brain, anything that affects the regular function of the brain, our brains have mechanisms to increase what we call plasticity, the ability of the connections between neurons to be modified, which is the basis of skill learning, well, all learning, essentially. The way you learn anything, to play the piano or a name or quantum mechanics, is all through changing some connection strength in the brain. So adults, as we discussed last time, do not have such a great capacity for plasticity. Of course, we can learn stuff. You can meet someone new, you will remember their faces, you will remember their names. You may even learn how to, I don't know, program or maths or something new, right? These are all things that we can learn, but the ability is decreased compared to a 6-year-old, which learns the same things in maybe 10 times the speed and probably better. For example, if you look at language, you can see how kids just excel at this compared to most adults. But when you have, let's say, tumor removal or some tissue that gets affected, what the brain tries to do is find new connections. Mm-hmm. And the way that it does that, and this is a targetedly, the damage itself leads to an increase in the ability for plasticity. What the therapist is doing in that case is guiding this plasticity. So if you lost certain capacity that you want to recover, you have to practice and practice and practice that capacity, and then the plastic parts of the brain will start acquiring new functions. Because the brain there's nothing special about any part of the brain. These are all neurons. It's just that the way that they're connected made that different parts of the brain perform different functions. So when you have damage, you can rewire the connections that are damaged into new functions.
So it's possible.
It is possible, yeah.
Okay.
It's not perfect, though. I mean, you still... there will always... Well, not always. It's not likely that it will go as smoothly as before the damage. But the goal in these cases is normally not to go to how you were before, but rather to a place where you are comfortable, right?
All right. Thank you. You wanted to say something?
Oh, well, so I was talking more about maybe prevention of these things, but that's there are lots of things that relate to prevention of, let's say, dementia or stroke or Alzheimer's. We don't know so much. Parkinson's, not so much. There is an interplay between genetics and life factors. Mm-hmm. And the balance of these two varies between different conditions. So, for example, some Alzheimer's cases are almost exclusively driven by one mutation. It's very few. It's just very few people in the world that have this mutation and that have Alzheimer's because of that. Most people, they don't have a clear genetic culprit. It could be 100 different little mutations that accumulated into the same outcome. Parkinson's as well, it has a strong genetic component, but also environmental factors seem to contribute. For things like, for example, in Asia, we have a lot of, the most common type of dementia is associated with frontotemporal dementia. It's a vascular problem. It's like microstrokes that you get across the brain, and over time they accumulate enough that you start losing certain mental capacities.
That's for dementia. Microstrokes causing by?
Well, that we don't know. It could be, there could be genetic components. There could be maybe blood pressure issues, or I don't know. Yeah, I'm not too sure about the causes, but it seems to be something about the circulatory cardiac system.
Okay. But to be clear, before we reach to those conditions, do we need to? Is it worth it to be mindful about your brain, how to be healthy, what to do to have a healthy brain life? I call it like that. During your youth. Not to reach to that level, or dementia, Alzheimer, all these very tragic diseases are not, we don't know yet.
Yeah, right now we don't know.
Okay.
So there are lots of efforts around the world, including Singapore, to try to figure out we don't even know what are the causes, right? So because if you want to start treating anything or preventing, you need to know why it happens. Exactly. And the issue is that well, to know if something that happens to you when you are before 6 years old affects your likelihood of Alzheimer's, then you need to follow these people for 60 years. And so we haven't had that chance yet. But as I mentioned, many countries are doing these longitudinal studies. So Singapore has this cohort of kids that, well, now they're not kids, now they're teenagers. But when they started, I think it was 14 years ago, if I'm not wrong, they were young kids. And now the intention is to follow them until the Singapore government wants to support this, which should be a long time. And then with that data, then you can go back and say, look, all of these people that developed this condition had this combination of factors, maybe maternal stress, maybe fever during pregnancy, maybe they ate something, or they were living in some part that had asbestos, or who knows, right? Like, could be a whole number of things. Or maybe what's the name of this? The fog? No, the smoke that we got.
The haze.
The haze. If they were, let's say, because remember also that during development, our brain has periods of extreme sensitivity that could be very short. Could be a couple of days where if your brain doesn't develop the right ability, it will not develop it ever. So these are some of the things that some of the neurodevelopmental disorders like autism or maybe Tourette's, it's believed that it's because of some small failure at some point.
Fascinating. Now that you mentioned data, now we have all these wearables and trackers and biometrics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have lots of them. There are organizations who are accumulating all the data from, buying all these other companies with the goal to try to figure out the behavior of what you exactly mentioned now, like the behavior of people across during a long period of time, to see what they can find from this. Is it helpful for? This is what you mean by longitudinal studies?
Yeah, I think that could be helpful. It's quite limited what those watches and rings can measure, but they can definitely measure things related to blood pressure and heart rate and sleep patterns, which could definitely be useful. I mean, it's hard to predict, right? Like, you need to collect the data. You don't know if you're collecting the right data. It could be that you have to collect, I don't know, the CO2 concentration, and that's the best predictor of whatever, developing Parkinson's. But we don't know. So for now, I would say yes, it's a very useful data set. I mean, hopefully it's being managed responsibly so that at some point in 50 years from now, when some researcher wants to see if body temperature fluctuations have an effect on schizophrenia, maybe they can go and check the watches of all these people and see if they can get this data to give them the answer. But it's hard to predict, right? It could be that none of this has any prediction.
Do you believe, what is your take on morality in that sense? I don't think this is morality, the word, but the fact of having this information available for everyone to see and for the purpose of research and or privatizing that information, it's okay. Now what we're seeing is the private sector who is developing this type of wearables to collect the information.
Well, the longitudinal studies tend to be governmental enterprise, but these are because they don't have a commercial outcome, right? At least not in the very short term. And they tend to collect blood and genetic information, and this the ethics of it is all very clear. Everybody's well informed about everything, and the private companies, I personally don't have any issue with them. I mean, if you're willing to make use of their technology, you're endorsing their collection of your data. If you don't like it, then don't use it. It's their prerogative. I don't maybe I haven't thought about it enough, but I cannot imagine that they could do something nefarious with this data.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. So let's move on to, in Singapore, well, across the world, there are so many people who are taking high-stake decisions every day. And that's it's not as stressful. Let's not use the word that we will learn that is, but it's from the brain's perspective, what happened to the brain when we are under pressure? And how can we avoid making the poor decisions when we are feeling under pressure?
Well, you cannot avoid making poor decisions. That's unfortunately, it's our human nature. We will make poor decisions. I mean, partly also is that people that are making high stakes decisions, I mean, it doesn't need to be necessarily like a president of a country, or it could be some doctor deciding on some therapy versus another, right? That's a very high stake decision for the patient. If you're considering two options and you are not sure which one to choose, two or more options, it does mean that they all have a likelihood of being the right one, or that they could all be the right one, or that they could all be the wrong one. You know, in the field of decision making, this is economic decision making, not because it's about money, but it's because it's about goods, whether it's health or going to war or something. These are all, you're comparing the value of different decisions and actions. The difficult decisions are those where the options are equally good or bad or intermediate. It doesn't tell you whether it's a good option or not. So how do you optimize this? You have no other option but just getting more information. Because you could be making a difficult decision because you are just ignorant about the background. And if you knew more, you would realize that one of the options is the clear best option for whatever you're doing. So yeah, no other option, no other choice but to ask Gemini what it thinks and get more information.
Okay. Yes, but we are doing that at the moment, actually. Yes. But do you think, are we able to train our brain to be faster deciding? Is it something that comes from the environmental situation of the person? Like, okay, how much you study, how much expert is in this task or not? Because even when you are an expert, I've seen people who take their time. They're not fast answering or telling you their response. They take their time. So being agile or fast in taking decisions, it's not. I don't see it that is correlated to how smart you are. What's your take on this? Is it? I mean, it's an assumption from a non-neuroscientist.
Well, let me think about it. I'll take my time.
No,
I mean, your intuition is completely correct. Just having speed doesn't necessarily mean that you are saying the better things. But under certain contexts, it is important to not take too long to make a decision. I mean, one of the most common decisions we make is what word to utter in our mouths. That's a decision, right? You're at every second deciding what to say. And there are kind of a sense in which you assume that people that are quick in their feet, like they can just come back with intelligent remarks very quickly. They may appear smarter. I don't particularly believe in that. I mean, if you need to take your time, I mean, in the end, it's a balance. And I think you also wanted to talk about intelligence. I think this is one element that, like the speed, that is important, but not crucial. To kind of link it a little bit to artificial intelligence, one of the things that we are trying to do is to get human-level intelligence. But what if you have a system that is slightly less smart than an adult human, but it can think 10,000 times faster? So imagine someone that has, 10,000 minutes to think about the answer to every question that you ask. Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably they will have the ability to think about links between their things in their memory, which is all we're doing when we're talking is going back to our memories and recalling elements of it and putting them together. Of course, in the context of the sensory world that you're living in. Right now, you're asking a question. This sound reaches my ear. Now my memories take over. My mind is my memories. And I use that to generate my language. So if you have more time to try to link maybe more distant concepts, then you may come up with more intelligent responses.
So we're going to link it now to aging, which is one of the best, more shocking statements you made in the previous interview is about how we age. And that is not as smooth as I thought. I thought I was aging by day or by hour, but it's not like that. It seems to be, we have our spurts when we are aging the most, and then we stop, and then we do it again in a point of time. More or less, this is what I understood.
Yeah.
So if this is what is happening to our brain as well, what's happening to our brain in that point of time?
Yeah. So I'm actually more familiar with what happened with the brain than with the rest of the body. I mean, I know that aging is a cohesive global thing. Every organ of your body ages. Mm-hmm. And these studies that look at jumps in aging around the age of 45 and 60, they are looking at cellular aging, so across the body. But of course, we know also that the propensity of certain memory loss or even onset of certain dementias and stuff like that, they do peak at certain points, right? Like around 65, you start seeing certain increases in some conditions. But again, I'm not entirely sure what the reason for this is. It's maybe it's related to, maybe it's a plant thing. So I think we also discussed how during early childhood, you also see these jumps. So it's easy to notice them when suddenly a kid grows a meter in 2 months in height, but yes, also that happens in the brain. There are cognitive jumps. So I'm not sure if the aging program that we have is an extension of these developmental stages.
For the leaders, now we are in an aging population here in Singapore specifically. And we have so many companies and people, decision makers that are getting older. My question is, how can I, or even myself, what do I need to take in consideration when about performance? How should we think performance while we are running a company? And we know that we are aging at the same time. So we are losing some of the abilities that we used to have, but now we are gaining others.
So I think we do this naturally without necessarily thinking about it. But when it comes to, we know that we cannot do everything, right? In most companies, in most human endeavors, we have specialization. Some people are good at some things, some at others. As you age, as we have discussed, your ability to learn new things decreases. And that could be related to the fact that you need to maintain the things that you have learned throughout your life. We don't have unlimited memory capacity. Our brain, as big as it is limited. And
really, we have a limited capacity for memory?
yes.
Okay, good to know.
I mean, of course, I'm talking at the extreme. This is not something you can measure, or at least not today. But yes, I mean, there is in theory close to infinite information that you could extract from the universe, and our brains are not able to keep all that.
Okay, understand the analogy. Okay.
But we also know that as we age, our memories start to disappear, some of them, and we lose the capacity to acquire memory. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we have reached the limit.
Mm-hmm.
And also, memory is not a yes or no thing. You could, for instance, recall certain memories that you thought were gone. For example, if I ask you what was the name of your first pet, maybe you don't remember, but maybe you see a photo and you're like, oh, Cuddles. And
Bolly, that was the name.
Bolly. So, but what I mean is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you lost the memory if you cannot recall it in certain conditions. It may come up at some point with the right cues. Also, all memories go through changes. So tomorrow, for example, you will remember in quite a good detail the context of this conversation. You may remember the brown couch, quite soft. You may remember the size of the room. 10 years from now, you will probably remember that we had this experience, but all of these details are gone. So this is a normal transition of human memory or animal memory, and that implies that you're removing elements that are not useful. You're polishing a little bit your memory to keep only the relevant things. Now, if you happen to be a couch designer, maybe all that you will remember is the shape of the couch. It depends on what you value in your life.
Yes.
But regardless of what you value, something is polished away. So this, in technical terms, is called going from episodic memory, so you remember the episode, to semantic memory. You remember an abstract concept now. Like names of people is a good example. Most people, you don't remember when was the first time you heard their name. Mm-hmm. But you know their name.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, when you're lucky. So yeah, I think, and that applies for everything.
Let's talk a little bit about AI, humans, and what really matters. Since we know that the big corporations are going to go back to the big corporations because everything is privatized in that space. So now, I mean, a large part of it. So it's been that we are being pushed to this intelligence, this external intelligence, artificial intelligence, to grow and to be better and better and better. I do understand that, as you said, when you age, we lose some capacity. So having a tool or a companion to help you with this, it's going to be very helpful. I do understand the meaning of that. But you also mentioned that in a future, not so far from now, we are going to be taking away from many of our daily tasks, daily works, because of the development of AI. Mm-hmm. And you also suggested that we could study humanities, arts, sports. So I feel like we are going back to the first civilization when we were very basic. It was very basic, and we were just starting to realize what intelligence or why humans were in the first place. Because now we're going to be proven that a machine is more intelligent than us in certain aspects, but in very important aspects of our economy, our life. This is the way you see it? Do we want to really reach to that level to see how far can we go with artificial intelligence? How smart can they become? What is going to be? What's going to happen to the humans? How do you position humans within your investigations and within your research and science?
Yeah. So I am pro-human.
Yes, good to know. I'm glad I thought you were going to put it all together in one box and just throw it away.
No, I mean, okay, so maybe let me take that back. I'll say something that maybe could sound controversial. Yeah, I don't particularly care about humans. I care about intelligence, sentience, and this is partly why I am more willing to eat a cow than to make a human suffer. I understand that cows can suffer, but well, maybe this is copium, but I think nobody would be willing to have even a monkey farm, right? Because they're too close to us. And this reflects, I think, something important about how we perceive other organisms, and it will apply to AI as well. The ability to experience life in a kind of like, well, not life, because machines will not be alive, but to have experiences, to have pleasure, pain, suffering, maybe being bored or whatever. These are the kinds of things that maybe a cow doesn't have too much, right? I don't see them thinking about the future of their cow kids or so. And this makes me not feel so bad about eating meat. Maybe I should, but it's a debate that I'm having with myself. So if you tell me, or maybe even an easier one, like an insect, if you have a farm of crickets and you do flour with them, or fla, like they say here, nobody would feel bad about the crickets. Maybe you could say, okay, it's not.
You don't feel bad about the mosquitoes, for example.
The mosquitoes or whatever. And these are intelligent organisms, right? Like they do a lot of intelligent things. The machines today, they cannot do half of the things that a mosquito can do. But what is it that we are valuing there? Why do we value human life and monkeys and maybe dogs over a cricket? And I think it's because we are naturally assigning a certain degree of sentience to different organisms. And crickets fall low and dogs fall high in this scale.
Can you explain what sentience means?
The ability to have a mind, a consciousness, to feel something, something that computers don't have, even and LLMs don't have. Although some people
fell in love with them. Yes,
some
I
people,
know.
No, some people assign sentence to them, but I think that's quite fringe. So why did I say that I'm not particularly caring about humans? Because if you tell me that in 1 million years from now, a new biological species comes out that is much more in this subjective scale of sentience that we imbue all organisms with, it's much, much elevated than humans, I would totally support their existence over ours if it came to that decision.
Oh my God, doctor. Now I'm going to have to invite you to a third interview because that's a bomb.
This you'll have to cut.
That was okay. I mean, I have so many questions about this. Humans now are becoming almost second level. Your...
Today we're first level.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Today we are the top of the line of what we should have an ethical consideration for. I mean, we should care about what happens to other humans. We should care also about crickets. It's just a lot less, right? I would feel bad if suddenly someone told me I'm going to destroy all crickets in the world. Yeah, I would feel bad, but not terribly.
Is it because of our emotions, our sentiments, as you mentioned?
Yeah, emotions. So again, we don't have a way of measuring these things. It's just a psychological assessment that we do of other things in the world, right? We don't have a consciousness meter or a pain meter or anything like that. We evaluate it based, this is not well understood actually, how we evaluate it. And maybe different people have different ways of evaluating, right? Maybe, there are some people that give plants the ability to feel pain, right? I don't, but yeah, I don't have a way of proving, right? They could be screaming in their hearts when you cut a leaf, but I mean, I honestly doubt it. But why do I doubt it? Because I sort of know how their behavior is. Normally, we associate intelligence and sentience with some behavior, right? If you damage any mammal, they will scream and twerk and contort, right? If you do that to a bacteria, they will do some movements, right? They will try to escape. It's not the same. It's a much less complicated behavior, and then you start thinking, well, we assign certain value also to size. We think that the complexity of the size matters. So a very small multicellular organ, like a worm, maybe it feels pain. It's definitely contorting when you crush a segment.
But let me see if I can understand what your point. So you're saying that when AI is as developed as we hoped or we are looking at, meaning it's like it's going to have a higher intelligence in many aspects as us.
It could.
You will favor that. I mean, not you specifically, but I mean, it will be favored. Humanity will be following. Shouldn't also say humanity, but I mean, what I mean is like we will push for that to happen.
I think we should. Okay, so there are considerations, of course. We don't want. We've all seen the movies. We don't want the Terminator scenario or the Matrix. These are things that many people discard, but I think it would be irresponsible not to take it seriously and to design future generations of AI with this as a primary consideration as you are designing them. That being said, the possible benefits of general intelligence, I think, are impossible to ignore as well. It would be unethical, I think. Not only for us, because you also have to consider that humans have been in this world for 100,000 years. We have had, and back in the day, we were essentially monkeys roaming the savannas. We invented agriculture only 10,000 years ago. We developed cities maybe 6,000 years ago. We haven't been around very long. Think about compare that to other species that have inhabited this world. They lived in the world for millions of years. So when we think about humans today, think about it as the 0.01% that has existed. The future, the next million years, is going to see who knows how many, well, if we make it, who knows how many people are going to be living. And personally, what matters to me is lots of people will be suffering if we continue the way we are now. We have always been talking about how great we're doing as a society because proportionally, extreme poverty has gone down, starvation has gone down, slavery has gone down. But if you look at absolute numbers, they're not. Compared to 1,000. And I'm not in the business of proportions. If one person is suffering, I think it's terrible. And so that's, I think, maybe as humans we can figure it out. But I would think that intelligent machines, with our best interests in mind, again, trying to make sure that happens, is a necessity as a possible path towards less suffering.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you soon.
A pleasure as always.